Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Uh, Thank you for coming for Dua Kamel program. Inshallah, without any delay, I would like to invite our Sayyid Abbas to the member with your help in Salat ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. May Allah, inshallah, accept from each and every one of you. Alhamdulillah, we had a successful 10 days of Muharram program. May Allah reward everyone who contributed, especially the volunteers, the sponsors. And we noticed that there's nothing more rewarding for us as followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam than to be at the service of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and to cry for him and to mourn for him. Before Shahr Muharram started, we began a topic that I introduced as being able to enjoy our taklif, being able to enjoy our obligation. And we asked this question, can someone enjoy the obligations that Allah gives to us? Or is it that I must be forced? I must force myself to do that obligation. We said that, and those who are taking notes, especially the young ones, we say that actions are of three. Actions come from three sources. When we do something, why do we do it? One is we have tashkhis. We identify an action as being something that must be done. For example, when it comes to lying, for example, you know by yourself that this is wrong and it must not be done. Or the truth, you know that you should tell the truth. Or for you, those of you who have a business, you work, and somebody comes to you, and for example, you can overcharge them. You know that overcharging them is wrong. Ripping them off is wrong. This is from tashkhis. This action comes from identification. Now, do we identify everything? Well, then the narration, it says that al-uqul, the aql, the pure intellect, can distinguish everything that is khair. It has that potential. But have human beings reached that? Yes or no? No. If you ask today about, for example, different laws that are made in different countries, some people say, this is right, this is wrong. They can't identify it. Many of times it even goes against the Prophet's instructions, even though what they say is pure aql and intellect. So we have not reached that pure state. And we understand from some of the narrations that what we have so far, compared to what the Imam of the age will bring in terms of intellect in that tashkhis part, is as if we only are in the alif or ba, the beginning steps, compared to the whole alphabet. So the first way that we do perform action is from identifying it. Now I want you to think about this. So what can I do in order for religious obligations become a little bit easier for me? What can I do? I can increase my understanding, increase my ma'rifah, increase my beliefs, my theology can be strong. I know, for example, during the time of the Prophet, many did not want to fight. Many did not want to fight and help Rasulullah because jihad is hard. Fighting is hard. But what would help somebody during that time? it would be if they understood that our sa'adat and happiness is following in whatever Rasulullah says. So the stronger their belief in Rasulullah is, the more they are aware that our Prophet has to be followed, the easier it will be for those takalif to happen. And today, in the same way, sometimes I truly believe this. A lot of our ulama and scholars, in terms of some of the obligations that they face, they have it a little bit easier, even though Allah gives them more difficult obligations. But when it comes to basic things, because they have knowledge and they understand, it makes things easier. And I think also, as we are progressing as Muslims, maybe I want you to take yourself to maybe a few years before, maybe 10 years before, and see maybe some things back then were very difficult for you because you didn't understand. And naturally, you're supposed to become more complete and understand more. Now that you understand more, those obligations become easier. Would you agree with me? So as our mind grows Islamically, and I know how to think, and I know how to identify, and I develop wisdom, because wisdom means to do what is right now, to know what to do. Then obligations start to become easier. This is one step in making obligations easier, and that is making our life and being accustomed to living our life based off the intellect. The second step, which we're going to be talking about tonight, which is very important, these next maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes, is why else do we behave? What else causes me to behave? Another source of behavior is tamayul, or inclinations, what I like to do, what I'm inclined towards doing. You see, some people, they have hobbies, and they love it. So let's just say fishing. They will drive all the way to another state. I don't know if there's any people here that really like fishing. I'm just saying, just as an example. And they will drive for days and days, and their family, say, doesn't really like fishing. But they're forced to go with them. And for them, it could be a miserable trip because one person likes it, the rest don't. So that tamayul makes that activity, that drive, much more easier because he says, I'm going to do something that I really like doing. I'll fly to another continent and do it, for example, if it's my hobby. So if I like to do something, if I'm inclined towards it, would you agree that it makes it easier? Makes the taklif easier, right? But if I don't like something, and naturally some things at the beginning, when we are becoming more religious, when we're becoming true Muslims, some things at the beginning, it might be hard on me because I don't want to be inclined towards it, for example. So therefore, we understand this second part is, can I change now my inclinations? Can I change my tamayul? Or we can say dha'iqa, taste. Because a lot of problems that our ulama says, or from the narrations we understand, is that we have broken our true taste buds, spiritual taste buds. And instead of being inclined towards what naturally we're supposed to be inclined towards, we're actually inclined towards other things. Let's say there's a big wedding recently, and you heard it on the news. I right now, not this center, the other center, let's just say because everyone here only worships and only studies and that's all you do. Let's say another inclination, another center, they were watching this marriage that happened in Italy, for example. And they're so inclined, and maybe tonight if I talk to you about it, how much money was spent, what type of food they had, you say, oh, what kind of clothes, what brand of clothes they bought, for example. How many carats was the diamond ring? Let's just say all that stuff. You say, wow, what a great speech, mashallah. Come again to this, then this and the other center. Come again and speak. Because, unfortunately, inside all of us, and it depends, maybe me the worst, is I have these inclinations that are false. But instead, what if I was so inclined to learn? Anytime there was Quran, I would listen and I would love that Quran because I enjoyed it. What if I just loved to learn from the speeches and the hadith of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim as-salam, and my true inclination was that knowledge? Let me see what Imam al-Sadiq says. Let me see what Imam Baqir alayhi salam says. One of our ulama, it's an interesting story. One of our scholars, ulama, who lived a very poor life in Najaf. He was one of the usulis and mujtahideen. And he was wondering this. He says, I love knowledge, that tamayul. I love seeking knowledge. And he became one of the greats in Najaf, maybe 80 years ago. But he's wondering, his family didn't really benefit because they were busy, for example, with raising kids, and he was always teaching and studying. He's wondering, if I have poverty, if my life is like this, I'm wondering, will my family also be rewarded as well, even though they don't have that knowledge I have, they don't have that worship that I have, but will they be rewarded? And then, the answer came to him that yes, they also be rewarded. But for him, he was saying that knowledge was enough as reward. Like he wasn't even thinking that the hereafter that give me this station. For me, being a mujtahid, being an usuli was enough. Why? Because such a scholar has preserved their natural inclinations. Naturally, we all want to know where we came from, where we are right now, where we will go to. Naturally, you want to know what the Quran is saying. Naturally, you want to know what our Prophet said, what the Imam said. But what happens that these inclinations are less in society today? Today, if you notice, they'll say, speak a little bit less, for example. Or sometimes on social media, they'll say, make sure it's not more than 60 seconds, for example. It is because of all these distractions, all these other things that we are inclined, we get used to, it breaks our inclinations, it breaks our true tastes. Did you ever have food when you're sick? It might be the best food ever, but it tastes funny. It doesn't taste how it's supposed to. Or let's say if you don't agree with this, somebody had COVID. I mean, that's what they say. They say that they couldn't smell right, they couldn't taste right, for example. So our problem is that when it comes to taklif and obligations, is that we break that natural dha'iqah and taste that we're supposed to have, and instead we're always attracted to batil, to wasteless things, to a lot of this news and distractions that it doesn't really matter too much at the end of the day. I have met some of the greats, and maybe they weren't a scholar even, they were practicing, they worshipped Allah a lot, and sometimes they would go, I went with him to one of the lessons of one of the maraja, it was one of the talks of Ayatollah Wahid, just speaking to some of the muballighin that are going to go out and do tabligh. He gave him some words of advice. I liked it. It was a good speech. Okay, good. I liked it. I got encouraged by it. But this muta'abbid, this abid, I really believe he was a slave. Allah have mercy on his soul. He says, are you willing to give all your money, all your wealth to hear this speech again? I was like, wow, he must really have liked that speech. MashaAllah, those hadith. But he was one who would always cry, always worship Allah. He would break Salatul Layl into like 3 or 4, 5 parts in the night. He wouldn't just wake up once. He would wake up, how they say Rasulullah would do Salatul Layl. Wake up, sleep, wake up, sleep, wake up, sleep. Someone like that who preserved and made stronger his inclination towards Allah is very easily willing to train the material from some more knowledge, for a little bit more knowledge. So our problem is that we have to be careful of ourselves, be careful of our heart, because then taklif will be hard for me. They say, why is it so hard? I don't feel like praying 5 times a day. Well, some part of that is being used to it. Some part of that is not understanding. And some part of that is that I haven't enjoyed salat. So if I have really, salat has for me become mi'raj al-mu'min, or at least some prayers, then I'll say, I like salat, I like praying. And if I don't pray, for example, or if it's late, end of time, end of the day, I feel bad about it. I feel like I haven't gained that much that day. So you see how important it is? One of the obvious inclinations that we should have, and one of the highest, so we should have an inclination towards good. Quran says this. We have a hatred naturally. Quran says, if you have time, I'll say the verse. I have a natural hatred or separation from evil, from fusuq. Quran says this. So what do you think I should love the most? What do you think I should be inclined towards the most? What is Islam built upon? What are the foundations of Islam? Bunyan Islam ala khams, 5 things, right? The narration has, Islam is built upon 5 things. Some of those, salat, siyam, for example, zakat, fasting. But then it says, and hajj, and then it says wilaya, an authority of the Prophet and his family. Then the tradition says nothing has been called as important as wilaya is. Even more than salat, even more than hajj. So what does that mean? It means that my inclinations should also be the highest when it comes to wilaya. And if God forbid, if I do not have those inclinations toward the Prophet and Imams, then I am doomed. There are people who don't pray. There are people who don't fast. They will be saved. I'm not saying from now on after this to stop praying and only take notes on this section. But more important than that is, where is your heart? Where are you inclined? Do you love the Prophet? Do you love the Imams? Why is it the tradition says that Hubb Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is equal to Iman? And hatred of Imam Ali alayhi salam is equal to bughd, is equal to nifaq and hypocrisy and kufr. Why? Because this is what we should be at least inclined towards the most. And you see that naturally some were inclined towards the Prophet. Naturally some were inclined to Imam Ali. And this is just how we are created, because they are deen, as we say in the narration, in the ziyarat, Imam Hadi alayhi salam mentions Imam Ali alayhi salam as being deen, as being religion. Let me give you this tradition to break it down a little bit. Actually, I have a story and a tradition. Whoever wants to hear the story, raise their hands. Whoever wants to hear the hadith, raise your hands. No, only you can choose one. Whoever wants to hear the story, raise your hands. We'll only vote once. Whoever wants to hear the hadith, okay, I think the story. I'll say the hadith later on, just want to make sure you're paying attention. So, it's an interesting story. This person, he had a family member, a brother, who they say committed every sin in the book. Whatever Tawzi al-Masail says, he did the opposite. The 4,000 whatever laws, he did the opposite. And he came to Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Khansari, a great mujtahid that the Tehranis and the Bazar came towards. And they asked Ayatollah al-Uzma Burujerdi to send us a scholar. And not only did he send them the scholar, he sent them a marji taqleed, an arif, one who would speak very few and he would worship Allah all the time, and very humble. He said, my brother, he commits a lot of sins. Grab his hand, give him some nasihat, give him some advice. And Ayatollah Sayyid Ahmad Khansari tells him something very interesting. Sometimes he would say, okay, come here, let me talk to him, let me give him some advice, let me put some sense into him. He says, take him to Karbala. He's in Iran. He says, take him to Karbala of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, see how his reaction is towards the shrine. Remember this tamayul I'm talking about, this inclination? Look at his inclinations towards the shrine. If he is moved by the shrine, bring him and I will talk to him. If he isn't moved by the shrine, I'm not going to talk to him. I'm not going to waste my time. It's very interesting for us as the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. What secret is there? This great Marja understands that, because obviously, the body is there and the spirit is there. When you do ziyarat of Imam Hussein Karbala, you're doing ziyarat of himself. So he says, okay, he tricks his brother, and some types of tricking is allowed and is wajib. He tricks them. He says, let's go to another country. Let's go and visit Iraq. You've been to Iraq. Let's go visit the stores there. No, is it like business or whatever? He tricked them, fooled them. And he went out there. The brother kept looking, walking around the haram, looking at the stores. Some people that are not that. Sometimes if you go to someone who's not interested in ziyarat, they want to do everything but the actual, ziyarat part. They want to eat food. They want to go there as a tourist. So then finally he says, brother, we're all the way here. Let's go in the shrine. Let's see what happens. Let's go in the haram of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So brother goes in the haram of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And because he had that inclination, that hidden, and the fitra and the ruh, it works in a way. Sometimes you break down those barriers, you begin to have pure iman. And it's just those barriers that are removed. Allah removed the barriers at that time. Brother began to cry and cry and cry in the shrine of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, because there he saw, the reality of Islam. And his brother told him, brother, let's promise each other that we'll never sin again. Or you'll never sin again at least. He says, I promise. And the shrine of Imam Hussein, I promise. So then he takes to Ayatollah Ahmad Khan. Sorry, asks about him later on. He says, what happened to your brother? You took him or not? He says, my brother is doing so good. He's doing so well that right now I think he's okay. He doesn't need advice right now. He's doing good right now. And this was the fact that inclination and that hope of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is so important that when those barriers are removed, everything else will come in its pure form. Later on, this person became a shaheed. When Saddam attacked Iran, he volunteered to be one of the soldiers, and he was killed in the path of Allah. So there's one person who's sinning all the time, according to sacrificing his life for Islam. I will tell you the hadith now. If you give me a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajal faraj. Again, what are we talking about? We said that our behavior comes from three things. One, tashkhis, identifying, understanding. Two, tamayul, or inclinations. This actually is a story-hadith. A person by the name of Ziyad al-Ahlam came to Abu Ja'far alayhi salam. Who's Abu Ja'far? Which Imam? Imam Baqir alayhi salam. He came to him, but not in a normal way. He came with an animal, a camel, that was either the ride was broken or the saddle was broken, in a way that he rushed so hard to visit Imam Sadiq in such a long way that his legs were limp and his legs couldn't move properly anymore. He injured himself, put himself in harm's way, or was at least very uncomfortable to go and visit Imam Baqir because he loved him so much. And the Imam asks, he says, why do I see your legs hanging, or they're weak? رِجْلَيْكَ مُتَعَلَّقَتَيْن. Why do I see they're limping? You can't even walk. He said, جُعَلْتُ لَكَ الْفِدَاء جِئْتُ عَلَى نِدْوٍ لِي عَمَّةَ الطَّرِيقِ. May I be ransomed for you? I came riding on a worn-out camel most of the way. وَمَا حَمَلَنِي عَلَى ذَلِكَ إِلَّا حُبِّي لَكُمْ وَشَوْقِي لَكُمْ. And nothing made me do this except for love for you and longing to see you, Imam Baqir, my living Imam. I put myself through hardship, and I had to rush. Sometimes we have, like Muhammad ibn Muslim, leave at the middle of the night to visit his Imam from Kufa all the way, for example. And nobody starts the journey in the middle of the night. Sometimes his companions, they loved the Imam. They said, let me go, Bismillah. And then he lowered his head for a while. He says, he had a question from the Imam. May I be ransomed? Sometimes I am all alone and Satan comes to me and reminds me of the sins and disobediences of the past. And I feel as though I'm in despair. Sometimes I come and I'm in, despair. I think of how many disobediences I did, how much sin I did. Then the Imam is going to give him some words of encouragement. He says, "Oh Ziyad, وَهَلَ الدِّينِ إِلَّا الْحُبْ وَالْبُغْض." And this is, what the entire point of this story I'm trying to say. He says, is religion anything else but love and hatred? So the Imam is not talking about action right now. He's talking about love and that inclination and that taste. And then he says, from the verse of Quran, tonight we don't have time, I'll do maybe tafsir or some explanation of it. Then he continues, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ. Allah has made you love Iman. If you ask people, they love faith. وَزَيِّنُهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. God has made faith, this is the surah ayah of Quran, beautified in your hearts. وَكَرَّهَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْكُفْرِ. And God has made you despise wicked disbelief. وَالْفُسُوقِ وَالْعِصْيَانِ. And has made you be hateful of disobedience and wickedness. From this verse of Quran, the Imam is explaining that God naturally has put in us inclinations to love faith and to hate disobedience and to hate disbelief. This is how we are created. I'll explain it inshallah later on. Then he continues and says other verses, but this is a very interesting story. Then he says, "Ata rajulun ila Rasulullah." A person came to Rasulullah, a man came to the Messenger of Allah and said, Ya Rasulullah, this is the same hadith. Inni uhibbu sawamin wala asum. I love those who fast, but I don't fast myself. Wa uhibbu al-musallin wala usalli. I love those who pray, but I don't pray myself. Wa uhibbu al-mutasaddiqin wala atasaddaq. I love those who give charity, but I don't do it myself. But I love it. I like it. Again, I'm not giving you this hadith, so you stop giving charity and praying and fasting. But I want you to think right now, what should the answer be to this? He doesn't pray. He doesn't fast. He doesn't give charity. What should Rasulullah tell him? Then in the tradition, he says, Anta ma'a man ahbabta walaka maktasabta. You will be with whom you love. In the day of resurrection, you will be with those who you love. You love those who pray. You don't do it, you'll be raised with them. You don't fast, but you love those who fast, you'll be with them. You don't give charity, but you love those who give charity, you will be with them. And also it says, وَلَكَ مَكْتَسَبْتَ. And for you is what you earn, but keep in mind, also you will be for you what you gain, and that good behavior will be counted for you. Don't say, for example, it's not in my understanding, this should not be an excuse that you don't pray or don't fast. But when you have love of Islam, when you have love of doing something, but you're not doing it, it means that even inclination in love is higher than action. But God forbid, if you don't do those actions, the inclination changes. And that's why we tell ourselves, and this is our hope, because Imam Baqir Islam is telling him so he doesn't have, shaitan doesn't come to him and cause him despair. He's saying, listen, as long as you love us, you came to us, and your legs are hurting, ahlam, ziyad, ahlam. You came to us, but do not have despair. A person came to the Prophet and loved Islam, didn't practice, but he will be resurrected. Will he have that position of the musallin in the hereafter? No. Will he have, for example, the same barzakh of the person who prays? No. But at the end, because he loves Islam, he loves imams, he loves, salat, at the end, there will be some good for him. There will be good at the end. So therefore, I'm saying this tradition that many times we are not careful of our tamayul, our inclinations, and how can we change. I had, I had more things from Imam Zainul Abidin, who was a shahadat, that he gives us advice how to change these inclinations. And why am I lazy in salat and dua? Abu Hamza, Imam Zainul Abidin, he explains to us, inshallah, maybe next week if we are alive, inshallah. But again, to review, our actions come from identification, our actions come from inclinations, and third, our action comes from taklif, from God. And the more you understand, the more easier obligation will be. The more you work on yourself from mail and tamayul and inclinations, the more your taklif will be, easier it will be. And the more you get used to submitting to the will of God, the more easier your inclinations will be. Going to mention about Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam a little bit, because it is the nights of Muharram, we should still remember and cry. Before I begin, we learn from this that we ask and speak directly to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, even though we may not be, I say myself, I might not be the best person, I might not act upon everything that Allah has, but at least I love to be like that. I love to be your true azadar. I love to mourn for you. Maybe, inshallah, Allah will write our names as being one of the mourners of Imam Hussein, one of the true zawar of Imam Hussein. Imam Zain al-Abidin lived a life that for around 30 years after Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he deeply cried for his father. They would ask him, why do you cry day and night? Why do you cry this way? And he gives the example of Prophet Yaqub alayhi salam crying for his son Yusuf. Even though Prophet Yaqub for 20 years knew that Prophet Yusuf was alive, just from separation from him, he became blind. Then he mentions in the maqtal and the tradition that should I not cry for my father was killed, my close family, multiple tens of my family members were killed. Should I not cry for them? Yaqub cried for them until Prophet Yaqub, until his eyes became blind. Should I not cry? Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam sometimes would try to perform the wudu and would spill the water. Try to perform the wudu and spill water. They would say that he was reminded that his father was killed in the state of thirst. And when he would see water, because he was in Karbala, he was on the day of Ashura, he saw the thirst. He's reminded of his Hussein alayhi salam, that they killed the grandson of Rasulullah, they killed the son of Rasulullah without giving him water. At the time of this time that we are at right now, that slowly they're taking the heads of the shuhada to Kufa, and from Kufa they'll take it to Sham. Some say they asked Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam, which was the hardest part? He said, Asham, 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 Syria, Syria, Syria. Because this is when Imam Zain al-Abidin, his hands were locked, bruising his neck, bruising his body parts. This is when Lady Zainab alayhi salam had to take the journey and see the beloved face and head and holy head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam this entire trip. This is when Imam Zain al-Abidin was in Sham, and the little daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, 3 or 4 years old, some call her Ruqayya, some call her Sukaina. And she asked she asked to see Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and instead of bringing her, comforting her, they brought the holy head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Zain al-Abidin saw this, and this is what he went through. But regardless, everyone came back to Medina, but one person was left, and that was the little daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, little Ruqayya, little Sakina. She grabbed on to the head of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Man aytamani ala sighra sinni. Who has made me an orphan at such a young age? She talked to her father. How does a 3 or 4-year-old daughter speak after she sees father? Maybe explaining what happened on this trip, how much they had hit her, how they didn't give her water and bread the whole trip, how come her feet are bruised and scarred from walking this whole journey. At this time, she holds and hugs the holy Muqaddas head of Abi Abdullah alayhi salam, and then the soul of Sayyida Ruqayya leaves her body, becoming another instance of the madlumiyat and oppression of Imam Hussein, but this time in Sham, in Syria. Ya Allah, we ask you, because of the holy blood that was spilled in Karbala, because of the tears of Lady Zainab, Lady Ruqayya alayhi salam, forgive all of the marhumeen, inshallah, all of your marhumeen. My mother, who this day or yesterday was her year, please, inshallah, forgive her sins, inshallah. Forgive your parents and mother's sins, inshallah. Ya Allah, we ask you to answer our du'as, inshallah. Change our inclination and taste in dha'iqah to be the best, and allow us to truly love our worship, allow us to love our service of Islam, inshallah. Give protection to all the mujahideen and those who are fighting against oppression, inshallah. Give protection to all the followers of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Make us of the followers of the Imam of the age, and expedite the return of Imam al-Zaman with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.